to the area, did you move to North Wales directly from New York when you were young?
Yeah, my family moved to North Wales when I was 4.5 years old, right before I started grade school. Yeah.
Same house ever
No,
since?
we actually lived in the older part of town, on the other side of Main Street, in a small rented house for about a year or two, and then moved to 10th Street where my parents still live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now on the other side, is it like, are you on like the Center Street side, on that side?
I
Or is
can't
it...
remember the exact street. It was right near by the VFW, by Pensy Hill.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I know where you're at.
Yeah.
So you went to North Wales Elementary School then, that
Mhm.
would have been on
That's
School
right.
Street.
Yep.
I'm trying to think, because do you remember the high school burning down in '56? Or is that a
yes,
little...
I do.
I'm just trying to give you like the local part
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
What are some of your memories of the time and then the transition? Because that was kind of a little bit of a tumultuous time of combining the high school in the mid-50s and then the new North Penn High School,
Right.
the original one. Tell me about the time and what North Wales was like, what the area was like when you were growing up as a teenager and then going to North Penn High School.
Well, as a little kid, I mean, even in grade school, I remember North Wales being this really tiny little country town. You know, I know there were less than 3,000 people living there. There was, you know, the train came through and you could ride your bike, you know, and walk across Main Street, and there was a little 5 and 10 that the kids used to go to buy candy and things like that, and there were really no stores or anything. There was a gas station and basically nothing on Main Street except all I actually remember the firehouse and the gas station.
Gotcha.
Pretty much all I remember. And I remember open fields and creeks and stuff, and kids, we just used to roam around. I remember taking my bike and riding from one side of town all the way to the other side of town and spending the day out there running around the fields and then coming back. So it was an innocent time, you know, it was a great time, and I'm glad I got a chance to grow up in that kind of environment, because I think it really, you know, being a kid who was born in New York City and my family also being city people, we felt like we were in the middle of nowhere. I mean, in fact, our relatives used to make fun of us. They used to call it Pennsylvania because the New Yorkers, they couldn't, I don't even think they could pronounce Pennsylvania.
Oh, very good.
But they just thought we had moved to, you know, it might as well have been Mars for all that they knew.
Now, North Penn High School. So then when you went to North Penn, you're a wrestler.
Yeah.
What other types of activities did you do? Were you just an athlete? Did you do other things?
I kind of had my feet in all the worlds. I was always a musician, you know, even since the time I was a little kid. As soon as I could talk, I started guitar lessons and voice lessons. I took voice lessons and guitar lessons in Lansdale. And I'm trying to remember the name of the little music store, but I can't remember. And I recall that when I first went in for my first guitar lesson, my mother told the guitar teacher, who was this older lady, she said, well, he's left-handed. And obviously the lady didn't want to be troubled with restringing a guitar and flipping it over. So she just said, oh, it'll be okay, he's fine. So to this day, I play guitar right-handed, even though I'm left-handed. So I don't know, probably screwed up my brain, who knows. But it was, you know, I was a musician, and I was always identified as a musician, but at the same time I love sports. So
Yep.
you know, when I was in junior high, I played football, but then of course I was too small to play football in high school, so I kind of gave that up. I ran track a little bit, but I wasn't very fast, so I gave that up. And the only thing I seemed to be any good at was wrestling, and I loved it, and it was one of the greatest things that I've ever done, and luckily I had a great mentor and coach with Ed Clavon, and he was really a great man, and he still is obviously a great man, and you know, just he meant a lot to me and helped me through high school and identify myself and learn a lot. And you know, being a wrestler, I think, gives you a lot of independence. It's very interesting. Through my life, as I've gotten older and I moved around the country, some of my best friends are ex-wrestlers.
Really?
And totally, I have no idea why. But these wrestlers seem to, there's something about them, you know. I think you learn a lot about you know, inner strength and suffering. I think it has a lot to do with it. And all my wrestling friends turned into bike riders. I'm a big bicyclist. I, you know, rode in mountain bike, and I do a lot of really long, you know, hard mountain rides. And wrestlers just know how to suffer. So I think I learned a lot from that.
Now, I was going to ask you about Ed, but were there any other teachers or people at North Penn that had an impact? either on your music or just if you remember particular teachers?
Well, you know, I was never involved in in any music in school. All my music was done in bands, context of bands and playing folk music in coffee houses. So I never really was in the school band. I never took any music classes. I never was in the choir or anything like that. They asked me to sing a number of times. I just never felt comfortable doing that. I don't know why, but I had a Spanish teacher, and she was amazing. And I always, you know, when I first started taking Spanish, because my background on my father's side, my father's mother was from the Rock of Gibraltar, and she was Spanish Moorish. And so I always had that, you know, kind of ethnically as part of my background. And I took Spanish, and I never realized how much it would come in handy living in Colorado with the Hispanic population that we have out there, especially out there. So now, you know, I get to speak Spanish on a regular basis. And most of it's construction Spanish, but I can make myself understood. So if I got anything out of North Penn, it was wrestling and Spanish.
Very good. Now, you went to Temple?
I went to Temple University.
And you were studying journalism? Is that what you went
yeah,
for?
I went as a liberal arts student initially, and then I became a journalism major because they didn't require a language, and it kept me out of Vietnam.
Very good. Now, did you ever do anything with that, or did you know, once you hit Philly, your music took off?
I worked in music as soon as I got to Philadelphia, and I was attending Temple. What that did was it enabled me to be in the city. And once I was in the city, I began to meet and work with people in the professional music business in Philadelphia. And that's really where it all started. I spent most of my college time doing music, you know, barely scraping through school. And I think as time went on, you know, by the time I became a junior or senior at Temple, I really realized that there was no way I was going to do anything else but music. But I was there, and I did graduate, and I managed to graduate. And writing for me has always come easy, whether it's writing prose or music or lyrics or whatever. So journalism was just it was an easy fit.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now your career is obviously so many accomplishments.
Mm.
When you first started, and I know you had so many varied experiences when you were getting started, when did you realize that, you know what, I think I've made it. I think I'm kind of a big deal.
I'm still waiting to make it. I really am. I set the bar pretty high, and I think that's the mark of a lot of successful people, and especially creative people. I think they don't want to accept that they've made it and now it's over. They just keep moving the yardstick and keep moving the bar. And that's what I'm doing. I mean, even doing the solo album that I just did, I felt like this is the best thing I've ever done. And I always want to look at my life as moving forward. So, and I think I found that with other people I've worked with. They just, they're not nostalgic people. They don't look back and rest on their laurels. They just like to keep moving forward. You know, maybe the public may not agree that it's you know, better work than they've done in the past, but I think that's really less important than how you feel inside. And I think it's that inner drive that keeps people like myself and my partner Daryl moving forward.
You have a son, Tanner?
I have a son. He's 12 years old. His name's Tanner. Yep.
Very good. So he's hitting middle school.
Well, not really.
Getting close.
Not really. He's been homeschooled his whole life.
Oh, okay.
And it's very interesting because he's very excited about coming here today because he's never been in a school.
Okay.
And I said, wait till you see this. This is a big, giant place with tons of kids. And he goes, well, what do they do? I said, well, they go to class, they walk around. So it's really going to be funny to bring him here. I said, you have to come and see this. We live in a place called Woody Creek, Colorado. And literally Woody Creek consists of a post office and a bar. And that's all that there is there. And we live on a ranch. We have tons of animals. We live in the middle of the mountains. So we live a really rural, out there existence, even though the sophistication of Aspen is not only 8 miles away, it's really a world away. And that's the kind of world he's grown up in, and he's traveled with us on the road ever since he's been born.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. You know, how do you balance the family life and the touring and all that?
Well, you know, when I got remarried in 1993, and when I met my girlfriend, who later became my wife, she said that she wanted to travel with me. And she felt that in order to keep the family together, it was important to stay together and travel as a family. Mm-hmm. And me having toured, you know, for 20 years on my own, running around the world like a lunatic, that was a concept that I couldn't quite grasp. But we started doing it, and the more we did it, the more comfortable we felt. And it was really weird because a lot of musicians just don't do that. They leave their families behind, and it really causes, you know, I've seen it. You know, it's a lot of the stories that you hear. I think it's because of that fact, because it becomes a disconnection between you know, running around the world and, you know, being a rock star or a pop star or whatever, and then trying to be normal and be home. So she, to her credit, I think she really, she kept our family together. And so to this day, we travel together. Our son's been around the world zillions of times.
Excellent.
Yeah, so he's a little more sophisticated than the average 12-year-old.
Sure.
He
Now,
still has to do math.
he's just got to do his homework.
Yeah.
What's the main message you know for the kids of what you'd want them to do, or what to keep in mind as they grow up and go through their lives?
Well, you know, I mean, I don't want to pontificate because I think that I don't think kids really relate to that very well. But I think they can see that, you know, just a kid who grew up in a small town can, you know, can make it, can work hard. Because really the story of Daryl Hall and John Oates is really a lot of hard work. We didn't have our first single till we had made 3 albums, and that took over 4 or 5 years. So we weren't exactly an overnight success, but we worked hard. We believed in what we did, and I think that's really the message. The message is that, you know, follow your dream, and you know, and you can do whatever it is you want to do. And I also think it's a message of responsibility. I think that this generation and the kids are about to graduate. I think they're going into a very unusual, unique world that's never really, you know, it's a world that's radically changed and radically changing. And I think they have to adapt to that world and figure out their way in it and how to make it a better place. So if I can just impart that, that'll be pretty good, I think. We're gonna have some fun today and hopefully play some music and chat a little bit, and maybe the kids won't think I'm an old fogey.